Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Into the Arena podcast. I'm Sean Corcoran, the host and the CEO of Men for Life. Here today again with co-host Andrew Wood. Andrew, how are you today?
I'm good, man. How are you? We're getting ready for the cold weather. You're about to fly to DC. You're going to be freezing. Louisiana
So
boy.
cold. So cold. Yes, after we finish recording, I'm going to go shopping and make sure that I have at least what I hope is appropriate, because otherwise I will be freezing outside. And, DC is going to be really exciting, for anybody watching. If you want to follow along, or if you're there and you want to find me, the easiest way is to follow on Instagram. It is LSEANCORCORAN. I'll put that in the show notes. And I will be speaking at the Pro-Life Advocates Conference on Thursday at 10 a.m. That is in the Westin. Then we're going to head over to the to Life or Death Con with the White Rose to see some of those speakers and listen to some great worship music. Then on Friday, we will be on stage representing Men for Life at the rally before the march, and then at the end of the march, I'll be speaking on the steps of the Supreme Court with Silent No More. And then Saturday, we will be guests of the Vitae Foundation, who is co-sponsoring the Pro-Life Summit for Students for Life. So it's going to be jam-packed, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of sleep on the plane on the way back, because we probably won't get any sleep during the couple of days if we get back. Andrew has assured me that.
Yeah, I mean,
it's going to take a lot of prayers.
Yeah, think positive, but
Right.
the way the weather's looking, you might get a couple extra days in DC.
I hope not. For myself, for my son who needs to be in school, and for Michelle, who will have the other 4 kids here, I hope that we get home when we're supposed to. But it looks like it's going to be 10 degrees on Sunday morning when we're supposed to fly out. So we'll see how that goes. Also, anybody who's in DC, again, the easiest way to connect will be on Instagram. But I would love to meet you in person. I would love to interview you. For if you want to be on the Men for Life Instagram page or on the YouTube page, answering just some simple questions about men in the pro-life movement, men in abortion. Why you think it's important for men to step into the pro-life movement, the impact that they can have. Why you think men have been absent from the pro-life movement for so long. These are just simple questions that I'm going to be asking people, and posting them online, because I think that as much as everyone likes hearing my opinion about everything all the time, I think that it's really valuable to hear the opinions of everyone else, and I would love to share your stories and share your insight on these things as we continue to grow Men for Life and grow this movement, and and get more men involved in the pro-life movement. I think they need to hear it from men. They need to hear it from women. They need to hear it from the young adults as well. And so that's why we're going to immerse ourselves in this entire week. And anybody who wants to participate in that, find me, and let's get you on camera and and share your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, the March for Life is always a great opportunity to kind of know you're not alone in this. I mean, there'll be people from all over the country. One of the text groups we're in, Sean, somebody said they're bringing 30 students, and
Yeah.
you'll just see a lot of young people, a lot of men, a lot of women, a lot of babies in strollers. It is a beautiful thing. Even though it's cold, it is pretty remarkable to be a part of that. So, of course, with Vice President Vance is going to be speaking as well, which is also going to be amazing. You're going to be up there, kind of being a part of that. So I just think we're on the cusp of something special. We've said that for years, but I hope and pray that we're seeing a shift in our culture when it comes to the issue of abortion.
Yeah, me too. And another thing, as you bring up Vance, something that made me think about was the videos that Abby Johnson has been putting out. I don't know if you've seen those videos over the last couple of days. I don't know how to say it other than, and I think this is how she said it, being critical of the pro-life movement as a whole, being critical of the idea that J.D. Vance would be invited to speak, being critical of the idea that he is the most pro-life vice president in history. That was her words. the critical part. And so I kind of do want to touch on that, even though we didn't talk about this before, because I think that as we move forward in the pro-life movement, the fracturing that's happening, and we've talked before about fracturing with the abolitionists, the incrementalists, and now we've got, a similarly and probably loosely tied together fracturing with Abby, and the pro-life establishment is how the abolitionists call it. So we'll just say that the mainstream pro-life organizations. I don't want to discount anything that Abby said. I do think that I would need clarification on some of the things that she said. One of the things that she said was that that the administration quietly released these fundings back, right, to Planned Parenthood. And she said after that, nobody knew about it. Now, I'm going to assume that the use of nobody knew about it means nobody knew about it. And then she said that on January 13th, the way that everyone found out about it was that the ACLU dropped their lawsuit. Okay, so I just want to point out that January 13th was last week, right? That was last Tuesday, and so we're talking about the idea that in the course of 1 week of finding out that the administration had done this, what actions or inactions have people taken? And I think that's a big deal because, when we talk about 6 days, 2 of them being over the weekend, and the question of, is the pro-life movement as a whole too passive and silent when really the question is, should they have reacted immediately? Because that's when they would have had to react in order for Abby to not make this point. Should they have reacted immediately, or should they be going in there to find out what the hell is going on and figure out if there's something that we need to do and make a unified front? Now, I don't know what the message is going to be from the pro-life movement as a whole, but I do understand Abby's criticism, and my hope would be that through that criticism, that everyone really looks at, hey, what's going on? And that release of funding to Planned Parenthood. That's something I brought up in my speech on Saturday at a March for Life event this weekend. So I recognized it and I brought it up because we need to be paying attention to it. But how is the pro-life movement going to react to that? Are they going to fall in line with the criticisms that Abby is making? Or are they going to make a unified statement that this is not acceptable and we are not okay with that? And will they make it to J.D. Vance, in private, prior to him standing on that stage at the March for Life, so that he addresses it? And so I would just urge caution for everyone watching these videos to say, hey, let's see what happens. We don't have to give everybody a year to respond, but let's see what happens, because it has been 1 week. And so that's generally a reasonable amount of time to figure out what's going on, what do we need to do about it. But, I think fracturing the pro-life movement, which is how I started this, can be really damaging to what we want to do, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, and we all want to abolish, to use their term, abortion. We just disagree on how to get there right now. So that was a lot from me, Andrew, just because I've been thinking about it over the last couple of days. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're taking the issue of giving the funds back. I think the bigger issue there is, no matter who you have in leadership in Washington, and we see this at state level, we see this across the board. If you do not take care of, and by take care of, I mean do a wholesale change of the bureaucrats that work underneath them, there's a lot of things that can still happen, even though the heads of those organizations, the heads of those particular departments, the president, the vice president, whatever it may be, even though they are saying one thing, the bureaucrats can do a lot of stuff and have a lot of power. That's why it used to always be joked that the ones really running the country were a bunch of 20-something-year-olds that were working in Congress because they have a lot of power. I mean, I used to work at the legislature in the state of Tennessee. We have a lot. I was in my early 20s, and I was answering emails as if I were the representative. I mean, the to act as if the ones that are kind of the face of the organizations or the face of the departments have the final say. There's so much. I mean, you got to think we're celebrating our 250 year as a country. That's been a lot of years to really build out a giant government entity where bureaucrats get in there and are making decisions. And we've seen it year after year. We see it when somebody from the left is in the White House. We see it when somebody's from the right's in the White House. And so first off, we have to recognize just how the system works. Now, we can say that's a dumb system and we don't agree with the way the system works. I'm all for that because I would agree it doesn't make sense. But if we don't recognize like that's the way the system is currently functioning, that's why when they say, we're going to go into the swamp and the reality is that swamp has deep roots, really, really deep roots. And so in order to make a wholesale change, it takes a lot of effort. We've seen a lot of progress, already in the current administration on a number of fronts. But the reality is it's a huge beast. If you think in terms of a ship that you're trying to correct, I mean, it's a giant ship that you're trying to correct. And, in terms of the kind of the pro-life industrial complex, and the reality is there is one, and whether we like it or not.
I like how you put that.
Yeah, I mean that whether we like it or not, that's what we have, and so there are times where I get very cynical because I see that. And then there's times where the Lord's like, yeah, you're a part of that though. So like, what do you do? So there's this constant wrestling match of what is the ultimate goal? Is it that we would be out of a job? Is it that we would, that abortion would certainly be unthinkable? And in order to get to that place, it is a process. And so it's a messy process. I think what you're seeing on the pro-life side of things is what I would hope for is healthy dialogue and conversation. Now, why don't you see this type of fracturing on the left? Well, here's why you don't see it on the left. It's because there's no convictions. There's convictions, but they're not rooted in any kind of morality or the good, the true, and the beautiful. And so the left is simply saying, we just want abortion on demand, no matter what. We can all fall in line together on that idea, and so what do you see on the left is you see those folks falling in line because their ultimate goal is abortion no matter what. And what you see on the right or on the pro-life side of things is you have some folks that would say they're on our team that believe in exceptions for rape and incest and life of the mother. You have some folks that would say they're on our team that believe that a 13-week ban is great progress. And then you have some folks that say that's not progress at all because the vast majority of abortions happen prior to that. And so we need a 6-week ban. Then you have some folks that say, well, a 6-week ban isn't enough because we believe life begins at conception. And if, what about between conception and 6 weeks? And so it's a constant back and forth. And then you throw into that attorneys and, no offense, Sean, but you throw into that, lobbyists and those things. And so what they're trying to do is view this on how do we get things passed in a state? And so that's why you see some folks bringing about, we need personhood amendments, and certain states saying that'll never pass. And my response has always been, how do you know? I love it when folks are like, well, that will never work. And it's like, yeah, but you don't know unless you try. And the very reason we saw Roe overturned was a law that was passed in a state that ultimately some lobbyists, some attorneys said, well, that'll never work. It'll never get to the Supreme Court level. And what actually happened was it worked and it got to the Supreme Court level. And so I think in some cases, it is going to be trial and error. It is going to be working it through. What I would love to see from a pro-life culture or environment is that we would get into rooms together and have these really hard conversations. And outside of that, I'm not real sure how we're going to reach ultimately the goal we want to reach. Now, because you have some folks saying, well, you're not pro-life enough because you don't believe this, and you have other folks saying you're too aggressive, we'll never be able to get to where you want to get. And then you have some folks somewhere in the middle just trying to go, well, I'm pro-life, but I don't know. You say some great things that I agree with, and you say some great things that I agree with. And so where do I land? Ultimately, I'm not sure. And I just think there should probably be some, and hopefully maybe there are outside of, we don't necessarily have to be in those rooms, but
Right.
maybe those conversations are occurring and to get us ultimately to the place we want to be, which is, abortion is unthinkable. But that doesn't simply happen at the state level. It doesn't simply happen at the policy level. We talked about this multiple times. As goes the man, goes the family, and then you keep going down that stream. The family to the community to the church to the culture to the politics. I mean, all these things. We can if we try to start at the policy level, we've missed it already.
Right.
Because you haven't. What did the abortion industry do? They told folks that people were having abortions in dark alleys with coat hangers, and they painted this picture of what of women's freedom and all of these things. You go all the way back to Margaret Sanger, early days, and they painted all these pictures. We need birth control. We need this. We need this. We need to be able to. I'm woman. Hear me roar. Anything you can do, I can do better. They spent the time cultivating the culture, discipling the culture. And in doing that, it made abortion seem like it's a right.
Right.
And Americans love rights. And so when Roe's overturned, it's like you're taking away my right as if it was enshrined in the Constitution. And it wasn't ever. And so, but they put in the work. And I think where we have sometimes struggled on the conservative side or the biblical worldview side is we haven't put in the work to disciple not just the culture, but to disciple the folks in our pews on the issue of life and on the issue of marriage and on the issue of these things, that we can get to a place of going, oh, so when I see this on the news or when I see this in the ballot box, that goes counter to what I know the Bible says. So I need to vote accordingly. And we haven't discipled in that way. Whereas the left, they would say it's not discipleship. I would say it is certainly a religion. It's a false religion, but it's a religion nonetheless. And they are discipling folks down this path. And that's how you end up with young people going, we need abortion. It's my right. All these things.
Yes. So I love that. That's something that I talked about on Saturday. It's something that I talked about on an interview that I was on yesterday, is that is where, and we didn't talk about this before, but I'm on the same page. Like, that is where we are behind, right? We as the conservative side, we as the pro-life movement are behind, because they were hammering this message and hammering this message and hammering this message in, and now we got to catch up, right? And so what I said yesterday was, I don't necessarily believe that abortion is going to end by my generation, right? I believe that the next generation will end abortion. And to that same thought, you mentioned, are we trying to put ourselves out of a job? I am. I would hope that the majority of people in the pro-life movement whose work is exclusively pro-life are trying to put themselves out of a job, because if abortion is unthinkable, then we don't need to fight against it anymore, right? But look, that's the reason that as we built out Men for Life, we're building it on principles of biblical masculinity, because I believe that abortion is going to end, and I want to continue to disciple men to be good men, even after it ends. But it starts with how we act today. It starts with the messaging that we give today. It starts with repeating the messaging over and over and over and over, so that the next generation hears it. Because if the next generation hears it, then, they begin to understand it as, man, this is truth, right? This is truth, and I believe in truth, and therefore I am going to uphold truth, and I'm going to fight for truth, and fighting for life is fighting for truth. And so we can't do that, and that's the heart of Men for Life, is we can't do that if men are silent, right? We can't do that if the church is silent, because when the church is silent, everybody in the pews hears it, right? The men hear the church isn't talking about abortion, so it must not be that big of a deal. I don't need to talk about it with my family. The young people, they hear, well, the church talks about so many things, and it doesn't talk about abortion. If abortion was important, the church would talk about it. So it must not be that big of a deal. It must not be that big of a sin. And then you've got the people in the pews who have had abortions or have lost a child to abortion, who are sitting there waiting for somebody to tell them that they can have forgiveness and redemption even in that sin. And when we talk about all the other sins and forgiveness and redemption, and we don't say anything about abortion, we're missing the discipleship to those people. And the pastors will say, well, I don't want to offend anybody who's had an abortion. You are offending them by not sharing the message of forgiveness and redemption. But the big thing is, if the men, and you brought this up, as goes the man, so goes the marriage. As goes the marriage, so goes the family. So if the men are hearing no message from the church or from us, right? And that's what we're doing, calling men to action, calling men to step up and speak out, because silence and passivity is antithetical to masculinity. And so if the men aren't hearing that message, and then they're not going and sharing it, then that next generation isn't going to hear it, And so I think that is something that that is really important, is that discipleship, not just what we're trying to do in discipling, the men in our generation, but discipling the next generations, because the next generations have that power.
And I even wonder, sitting here, and I haven't given this a lot of thought, so, but it's hitting me. What we're seeing right now is young men are leaning more toward conservatism, from a biblical standpoint, from a political standpoint, from a marriage standpoint, all of those things. And at the same time, young women are going the other direction. And so part of me wonders if, I think it's at this point, we can look at the data and say it's pretty close to a fact that we have farmed out discipleship of men and women on the issues that are facing our culture today. We have farmed those things out to the culture. And so we won't talk about the issue of life. We won't talk about marriage. We won't say the hard things that need to be said, because it may make somebody uncomfortable. It may ruffle feathers, or it's kind of like telling people they need to get healthy when you're yourself not healthy. It's like, well, I don't want to step in that because, my marriage isn't perfect. Who am I to tell somebody else their marriage needs to be worked on? Or I'm not the perfect dad. Who am I to tell somebody to be a better dad? And I think that's the opposite of what the gospel has called us to do. And so at the same time, we're trying our best to, and look, we're putting our money where our mouth is. We're putting action to this. It's not easy. It's not something that it's like, how many, men's groups can I be a part of? Because we're trying to get them to a place of betterment, and not just them, but us, ourselves. And it helps to be surrounded by other guys. And so I think what the feminist movement, they were successful in infiltrating the church. Yes. And so when you do that, now some of that is because they had no one to meet them at the door. It's the same thing that happened in the garden. It's like, well, the serpent it was pretty easy when the man's not going to chop his head off. I can just go after his woman. And so when that movement comes in, and we talk about the issue of life and marriage and all these things, when we as men say and agree that it's a woman's issue, and the person that's discipling them on that very issue of abortion is the culture that wants to see abortion rampant in our country, that you see the fruit of what we're dealing with today. You also see the fractioning happening because the void and the silence, as you said, is being filled because there was silence. So people are going to naturally stand up and speak into those things, good or bad. And some of those folks some of the things they're going to say, we're going to agree with and not along. And then they're going to say another sentence and we're like, well, that seems to be crazy.
Right.
And sometimes we may say things where they're like, man, that he's killing it. And then we make a shift and they're like, well, I don't line up with that. And so when there's not a good system in place and discipleship being modeled well, there's a void, and that void is naturally going to be filled. And so when there's silence on these issues, someone's going to speak up and say something, because right now we know without a doubt, especially with men, they are looking for someone to follow. They're looking for someone to lead them somewhere. And the void is there. So what are they doing? Sometimes they're following guys they don't have any business following. Why? Because I do this all the time. I don't know if you do this, Sean. You go through and you watch a reel on Instagram, and I'm like, man, I want to send this to everybody. And then I go to that dude's page, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm glad I didn't send that to anybody, because I agreed with that. I don't agree with the language that he's using and the things that he's saying about this, and so that's where we are currently at as a society, is that there are voices that are seeking to fill that void, and then we have to discern which voices to listen to. And as a dad, now I'm having to discern which voices are speaking into my kids, which is just, there's so many out there, right now. So it is quite the process. But I think the one thing that I've always appreciated about the pro-life industrial complex is, are there some bad apples in there? Sure, just like any place. But for the most part, I do think we're at a place where the reason why sometimes it doesn't seem like a unified front is because we have convictions to our core that we stand firm on. Right. And it's going to take a lot to get us to shift a position or to see it a different way. And I can appreciate that. And I do think there should be opportunities to come together and have some of these conversations and wrestle with what that looks like. We don't all have to, agree on everything, but ultimately the ultimate goal is that abortion would be ended. And so there's different ways of getting that done. How can we get that done in the state of Tennessee? How can we get that done in the state of Louisiana? How can we get that done across the country? And that's just the tip, man. I mean, you go worldwide, Lord have mercy, And so, but these conversations are helpful. I think conversations behind closed doors, really hashing it out, are helpful. And we probably need to see more of that.
Yeah. And you said something earlier that I just want to be clear that I agree with, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I believe I heard you talking about was, or what I think you said was that people will object to the presentation of certain bills because that'll never pass, right? And your objection to that is, well, let's find out, right? And my position is the same. Like why are we getting in the way of it? Let the political system do what the political system does. For the abolitionists to be blocking incremental bills is not helpful. For the incrementalists or the pro-life, what'd you call it? The pro-life industrial complex. The pro-life industrial complex or what the abolitionists call the establishment to be blocking abolitionist bills is not helpful. If it can pass, then it will pass. If it can't pass, then it can't pass. Now, on a personal level, I think that, and I could be wrong, and so that's why I'm very clear. Hey, that there was something presented in South Carolina, that might change the way people are perceiving this if it ends up passing. But it's an abolitionist bill that was presented, I think, last week. But and they'll call those, just to be clear, they call those equal protection bills, where the baby in the womb has the same equal protection and rights of a baby outside of the womb or any other human. And which definitely makes sense on the front. I as an attorney, can pick apart 500,000 different ways that enforcing these could be incredibly problematic, could be incredibly invasive. I think that a lot of thought has to go into what are we actually doing, more than just we need to pass a bill for equal protection to see if we can get equal protection. I think there's a lot that goes into it, and I don't know that they haven't put that thought into that. I just that's my reservation, but I don't think we should be getting in the way of any pro-life bills. I think that our resources, we need to focus on who's the opposition, right? The opposition is abortion, the abortion industry. The opposition is not each other. And so that fracturing is really difficult for the movement as a whole. It distracts us. It distracts us from the work that we're actually doing, and it presents us as a fractured movement to the opposition, which is what they want.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, there's a reason why, between my house and the church I attend on Sundays, there's a bunch of churches. It's because it doesn't mean we don't have a unified front. It just means we have different preferences. Some people like a piano. Some people like a piano and an organ. Some people like drums and basses, and some people want none of that. And there's a reason you're a Catholic and I'm a Baptist. And so in some ways this is just kind of normal, healthy. This is the way things operate. I think the difference is the left is so entrenched in the abortion agenda. They have a unified front because they're like, we really don't care how we get there. We just want more abortions. If that means we got to adjust the FDA rules so that abortion pills can wind up in the mailbox, let's do that. If that means Kermit Gosnell can operate for decades and ultimately end up in prison, so what? He's a useful martyr. He did his job. Now we can move on. Like if their mindset is at whatever it takes at all costs, abortion needs to reign. And so, do I see us ever getting to that place on our side when it comes to the life issue? I think that, again, the difference here is there's morals, there's a value system, there's ways of doing it. I think there's, then you couple that with compassion and grace and truth and where you fall on those things, like all of that goes into play. And so then when it plays out in front of us, it's a little bit tougher. Again, I think too, you factor social media into that, and then we just know people by, a minute and a half reel. And what I would venture to say is, if I got, and I've had some of these conversations where I might on the surface think I disagree or they disagree with me. I get on a phone call or I get in a room with them. I'm like, wow, we really agree on a lot. There's a couple things that we aren't on the same page on, and we can hash that out. But for the most part, we're on the same page. And so I think more conversation is all. That's one thing Charlie Kirk used to say, right? Is more conversation, more debate. That's not just with people on the left. That works with people on our team as well. Like more conversation, more debate, more wrestling through these issues. Hey, pick up a phone and make a phone call. Shoot a text to somebody. Hey, I had people do that to me the other day. I commented on something on social media, and friends of mine reached out and was like, hey, can we talk about that? And it gave me, instead of just blasting me or instead of making an assumption, hey, can we talk about it? And then after we talked, they were like, that's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure. That's what friends do. That's a positive thing. I think what social media kind of feeds is this back and forth argumentative kind of posture, instead of just saying like, hey, where do we agree? Okay, that's good. Let's set that to the side. Where do we disagree? How can we get some of these things into that agree column? And there's still going to be things that just won't make it there. And that's okay too. That there's ways I parent, you don't parent. And I could, die on that hill and say, you need to do this. And you're like, it's just not going to work. And that's okay. So those there, I think realizing that and recognizing that we're all trying to move the ball down the field would get us to a better place. And I'm not saying like sit in a circle, sing Kumbaya and put your convictions on the shelf. I'm not telling people to do that. But I do think more conversations, and sometimes wrestling, like hard conversations, And I've had those too with folks in the pro-life industrial complex. And so,
Yeah.
we need to have some of those of where we feel like the Lord is pushing us, but they make people uncomfortable. They make me uncomfortable. We've had conversations on here about infrastructure and plumbing and different things about when it comes to abortion. Those make me uncomfortable. I do not enjoy having those conversations.
Right.
And when they get brought up, there's part of me that's like, how do we change the subject as quickly as possible? But these are conversations that need to happen. And the same thing when it comes to policy, when it comes to any of that, how are we shaping and influencing those that are ultimately writing the bill? And then how are we doing what's best for the citizens of our community and the constituents of our community? And so what we may pass in Tennessee may look different than what's passed in Idaho or Colorado or California. But what are we doing to get us to that place? What I hate to see is when there are moments where, and I've seen it, where a pro-life lobbyist is sitting next to an abortion lobbyist and they're fighting against the same bill. That concerns me.
Right.
That concerns me.
Yeah, and that's kind of like how this started, right? Or how, or what I was talking about with the times that that the pro-life establishment has fought against abolitionist bills, and it goes both ways. Like,
sure.
Like, so I think that gets to what you're talking about is if we're on the same side as the true enemy, then we're not in the right place. It's on abortion bills. If we're on the same side as the true enemy on abortion bills, then we're not in the right place. Like, we're on the wrong side. And so whether we're abolitionists, whether we're incrementalists, whether we believe whatever we believe, if we're on the same side as the people who want abortion in every case at all times, then we're on the wrong side. And I think that's something that we need to really look at and say, hey, who are we fighting? Like, are we fighting to win? And look, you bring up social media, and it makes me think about the debates, the public debates, because there's been several that have been on recently that have been on YouTube that are debates, abolitionists versus incrementalists, and I always question the how genuine these things are when they're public like that, because everything now can be used for sound bites, and if all you're doing is saying, yes, I will debate you, and look, this is me about to get super cynical about how people use social media to boost their own position or ego, but recognizing that we're putting this out on social media. So, but if you are having debates on social media, knowing that, I don't know, 10% of people might watch your YouTube video, but everyone's going to see it on Instagram. And Instagram is 90 seconds to generally 30 to 3 minutes, 30 seconds to 3 minutes. So if the way that you prepare for your debate is to create the sound bites that will come across strongest on Instagram, then are you having a genuine debate? And I've thought about that in many cases. What is the ultimate goal of this online debate? Is the ultimate goal of this online debate to persuade the people who are watching, or to create content? And so I think that's something that people need to be cognizant of, because I want to have some conversations with abolitionists. Look, I brought up at the beginning of this that after I finished my presentation at the Pro-Life Advocates Conference, which I would say is the industrial complex, right? That'll be the organizational and policy leaders of the pro-life movement. After I finish my presentation there, I'm going to head over to the Life or Death Con with the White Rose. Now, the White Rose takes a different stance. They're not openly abolitionists, Many of the members are, but Seth Gruber has kind of walked a line, and I don't know that he's really walking the line, but he's jumping back and forth on either side of it all the time. He's very, very animated, but I wouldn't call them part of the pro-life industrial complex, right? But I think that what's important is that everybody has points, but I want to have those conversations with those guys, and not on camera where they're trying to get sound bites. I want to have those conversations with those guys, to figure out where they're coming from. I actually did with the Men for Life podcast. There's a gentleman who wrote a book, an abolitionist who wrote a book, and I interviewed him, and I chose not to put it out because at the time I don't know that I was able to articulate my position in a way that made clear where Men for Life stood, where I stood. And what I didn't want to do was to come out and post something that gave the appearance that I was taking an extreme position. And so I didn't post it. But I'll tell you what, I learned a lot in that conversation. This guy was not trying to get sound bites. He was a very quiet guy. He just had very strong convictions, as you've said a couple times. And he, it was a good learning experience. It didn't move me, to one extreme or the other. I still left with the same position I went in with, which was we should not be getting in the way of. That's what his book was about. His book was about the abolitionist bills that have been presented in the states that have where the pro-life movement, industrial complex, has gotten in the way of them, has fought against them, right? That's what the whole book was about. So, my position in the beginning of that interview and my position at the end of that interview was what we already talked about. Why are we fighting? We should all be on the same side of it.
Well,
we shouldn't be getting in the way of each other.
Well, and I think, even within Christendom, within the church, I love a good back and forth on, are you a premillennialist, an amillennialist? Are you paedo-baptism? Are you sprinkling kids? Are you dunking? Wait till they can. To me, I enjoy those conversations back and forth. I have strong opinions on those, but I walk away from those conversations, and oftentimes those pastors walk away from those type of debates, and their friends, and they're praying for each other, and they're seeking the best for those churches. I think where we get out of line sometimes is we get angry, or we take it personal, or we label folks a certain way, and especially when it comes to folks that are claiming to be on our team. And I get it. It's because you're claiming to be on our team. We got to stand firm and stand strong. And if you're articulating a position that is counter to what I believe is our position, then we gotta have that back and forth. And look, I've had those conversations with folks before where ultimately we walked away going, okay, I'm not changing your mind. You're not changing my mind. No harm, no foul. I'll pray for you. But we can't partner, or we can't lock arms on this particular thing within this particular issue. But outside of that, I'm with you. And I think sometimes people are like, oh, well, you're not, your convictions aren't strong enough or whatever. And I'm going, look, what I want to see is abortion ended, and I literally make it my life, my work to see that happen. And in the same way, we want to see men be better men, husbands and dads. So we're making it we're not just saying it on YouTube. We're not just saying it on a podcast or in front of a camera and then turning it off and going, whew, I did my work today. I don't have to actually do anything outside of that. I want folks to go, yes, we need to be able to articulate positions in front of large crowds and small crowds on social media, all those things, in writing. But we also need to be walking that in our daily lives? Like, how are we helping? What are we doing to make someone's life better? What are we doing to help equip those that are facing an unplanned pregnancy? What are we doing? So regardless of what happens in Washington, regardless of what happens at the legislature anywhere, regardless of what law is passed, the reality is there will always be women and men together facing unplanned pregnancies, period. So
Yes.
we have work to do. I mean, there's always going to be a young man being raised without a father. Unfortunately, until the Lord comes back, that's the reality. So the question for men is, what are we doing to step into the void to help in that scenario? And so when we start to view things that way, then we're not motivated by anger. We're not taking things personal. We're not getting bent out of shape about this or that. We're going, I'm gonna speak into the things that I know about and care about, and that I can help move the ball down the field when it comes to legislature or policy or anything. But also, I'm gonna walk the walk. I'm gonna attempt to do that on a daily basis, and it goes back to in our work. Sometimes we're professional Christians, and our personal walk is the back burner because we pray in front of groups, we speak in front of groups, we do these things kind of outwardly. People make assumptions about us because of what we do for a living. But what's happening in that private moment? Where are we going? How are we leading our family? How are we helping? Where are we giving our own money to other organizations and to ministries and to help others? Like, those are the things that are going to help. And the reason I know this, it's like the other day, Sean, you had somebody comment on one of your posts, and they said, so how many kids have you adopted? They thought they had you. And of course you can come back and go, well, I have. So what else do you have? And it's the same way when you see everybody that's on the left that's fighting.
I'm sorry. I just want to point out that post, of all the posts that I've made, that post garnered me my first Nazi. Like I am repetitively a Nazi.
That's
I'm
so
not
silly.
sharing that thread because I think that person's hurting really bad.
I'm sure.
But they just kept throwing out, "You're a Nazi," and I just thought, number one, like telling me that I'm a Nazi doesn't affect me because I'm not a Nazi. But
right.
But number two, of all the things that I posted. The one that's going to make you the angriest is me pointing out that someone said, I must not be pro-life unless I've adopted, and I say I've adopted. Yeah. And you're like, Nazi.
I actually did the thing you said we should be doing.
Right.
But it's the same thing that happens when you see on the left, when they're at these rallies about, fill in the blank, immigration, whatever it may be. And somebody goes up to them and they say, do you believe in this? And they're like, of course I am. That's why I'm here with a sign. And they were like, well, that's great. We have a few refugees that need a home. And they were like, well, I can't take anybody in my home.
Right.
I'd have to talk to someone else. I have to do this. I have to do that. And it's like, yeah, you're not about doing the work.
Right.
And so if you're not about doing the work, then is it really a conviction? It's the same thing when we see, you would hear when they would talk about putting a wall at the border, and Nancy Pelosi saying we don't need it, but her house is surrounded by a fence with a lock and all these things, and it's like, do you not see the things that like your daily routine is counter to what you were saying? And it happens to us on our side too. Like, if our daily walk and routine is counter to the thing that we claim to be most convicted of, then there's a problem there. And so I would just encourage folks, like, yes, there's a debate going on right now within pro-life circles on what's the best way moving forward. There's some folks that feel adamantly, one direction versus the other. And there's folks somewhere in the middle. And I think what I would encourage folks everywhere, and this is what I've tried to do even in personal conversations, is we need more conversation around it. And the more we can get some of these leaders in the room and hash it out. And look, there's a lot of folks that's not going to be comfortable. It is not, something that, we don't want to wrestle with those things. or we feel very strongly about where we are and we've made an assumption and a belief about the other person and vice versa. But I would just encourage folks to come together, have those conversations, hard conversations. You may still walk out and go, I didn't move at all. You didn't change my mind at all, but I get a different perspective of who you are. I kind of now see where you're coming from, and hopefully they would see that from you as well. And then we can go further. Then at least when we're having the discussion, we're not just throwing out nonsensical anecdotes about what we think they are, caricatures of who they are. It is, now I know that person. I may disagree with them, but I actually kind of like them. And I'm okay, like we just disagree on that thing. But, and I don't know about you, Sean, I have people in my life that we have different beliefs on things, but I like them. I enjoy being around them, yep. And I pray for them, and I want to see, would I love to see them come to, my belief system on certain things, certainly. But sometimes these are, it's one thing if it's a primary issue, like they're going to go to heaven or hell, like we need to have that. I need to have some zealousness about that. But if it's a secondary issue on just the policy level thing, I think we'd be better off if we would just be able to have those conversations and just know we may disagree on that, but we can live to fight another day. And I love you as a brother, or love you as a sister, and we move on.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because, it really goes to what Charlie Kirk did, right? Mm-hmm. That he welcomed opposing views. He didn't necessarily make assumptions that the person who was coming with the opposing view was a bad person. And in fact, I think in order for him to maintain the composure that he maintained, he had to make the assumption that it was a good person who came from a different perspective, right? And a lot of times that is where we're at, not just within the pro-life movement or the conservative movement, as a whole. But and look, and when it comes to the conservative movement, I'm very clear that I would not characterize myself as MAGA. In the context, like, yes, I want to make America great again, 100%.
Yeah, right.
In the context that MAGA
such clever,
is used,
that's such clever marketing, isn't it? So good.
It is. Yeah. So I just want to be clear for anyone who wants to chop this up and make it seem like I don't want America to be great. I do. I want America to be great again. I think it's an amazing theme. I think that there has been a caricature, to use the term that you used a minute ago, of what MAGA means, and many people who follow Donald Trump, they fall into that caricature, and they're proud of it, and that's fine. I don't, agree with it. I say the caricature would be blindly agreeing with anything he says or does, right? And I would not put myself in that category, but I'm a conservative, and I think that in the conservative movement there's been some fracturing as well, but not just within, it's not just, and I think this is everything you just talked about. It's not just that, when we have opposing views, and this is the man. So let me stop myself and just share something with you. So when I posted that comment about, how many kids have you adopted? And I said, well, I've adopted 3. That's a ridiculous argument, but you came to the wrong place with it. One of a guy I know commented that he's currently in school and just finished a week-long section of a communications class on echo chambers, which I think is fascinating because that's not something that would have been around when you and I were in college, right? But like now they're doing classes on echo chambers, and I think echo chambers can be incredibly dangerous. I work very hard, sometimes very hard, to not block people who have what I would view as crazy beliefs on certain things, because I want to know where other people are coming from, and what I don't want is to have a cheering section. Like I don't want my entire social media to just be building on my ego in a cheering section. Like I want to understand where people are coming from, because if you want to change the culture, like you have said and like I have said that we want to do and we need to do, and especially when it comes to abortion, you have to reach the other people. Like we're not going to change the culture by only reaching people who already agree with us. And so I think it's really important not to build that echo chamber. It's very frustrating sometimes to see the people who have extreme beliefs on the other side. And I went to law school, and there's a lot of people who are lawyers who are liberal. There's people who went to school at Berkeley who went to law school with me, and we don't agree on anything except that both of us believe that we want the best for humanity. We disagree on every possible way on how to get there.
Right.
But that's where she's coming from. And so to Charlie Kirk, welcoming people to talk and give opposing views not only gives an opportunity to understand the opposition, which is really important if you want to fight for truth. It also gives an opportunity for the opposition to hear what you have to say. But everybody's not bad, and I think that's the big point, is that that just because someone might, my hope is, just kind of bringing this back to what we started with Abby Johnson's videos. My hope is that her goal is to challenge the people who she thinks have acted or not acted appropriately, so that they hear that challenge, think about that challenge, and possibly, move forward in the way that she thinks that I hope that's her goal. Right. I hope her goal isn't to further divide the movement, because that's not helpful.
Well, I think there's some, even when you look at the way our culture, especially from a policy standpoint, has been set up. I used to say this all the time. I was like, the left will say they want to get rid of all the guns in the country. But I don't think convictionally the policy wonks really want to do that. Now, why would I say that? Well, because they raise a ton of money on that every time a shooting happens. They campaign on it. It helps them in elections. If you remove that, what happens then? They've never really they've had the House, the Senate, and the White House. They've had the Supreme Court. And they never really did anything in that, but they yelled about it. They argued about it. They got in front of every, CNN camera they could to say, we need to do this. And, and in the same way, and this is hard for us, in the same way with the life issue, there's folks that have got in front of every camera, done all the right things, said all the right things. We're going to end this. We're going to defund Planned Parenthood. We're going to do all these things. And when they have the opportunities to do those things, they don't. Right. And so there is a sense of, again, the cynical side of me is like, oh, you don't really want to see it ended, because again, you can campaign on it, you can raise money on it, you can, it helps you at the voting box. Yeah. And I think that's where the folks that are doing this work day in and day out on the ground, we really believe this. When I worked at the legislature, it's been far enough removed. I think I can share this story. But I remember there was a moment where in the news, I listened to talk radio all the time with my dad, and we would rant and rave about politics. And we were like badge carrying firm believers of what we were spouting. And so when I was working at the legislature, I thought, this is my chance. We're going to make all kinds of different, all this stuff. and the guy that I was interning for, he had a leadership position of the party, and I'll let you assume which party I was working for. But he had a leadership position at the legislature.
You just told us you had a badge and you were card carrying.
Yeah. So he said, hey, tonight we're having a dinner. I'd love for you to come. Well, we voted for that year. There was a majority. The Republicans, the conservative movement, didn't have a majority in the state of Tennessee in that year. But there were 13 conservatives that voted for the Democratic speaker. Okay? And so those 13 conservatives, quote unquote, in the news were like, they were bad, because they voted, even though there was no chance a conservative speaker would win the speaker vote, you still you need to not vote for the other guy. So I show up at this dinner. And at this dinner, I start looking around, and I'm counting how many people's there. And there were 13 people, and I thought, huh. And then the speaker walks in that was just voted to be the Speaker of the House, who was a Democrat. So we're in this room. He's the only Democrat, all these other dudes. And I remember calling my dad after that meeting and going, hey, I think we're getting worked up about like things that we shouldn't get worked up about, because they're all buddies up here. Like they're trying to, and there's a cynical side of going, they're all buddies, but they get in front of a camera and they argue and make it out like they're not. And then there's another side of going, they're trying to figure out what's the best way for me to get the things passed for my constituents. I can't just be hating that person over there.
Yes.
And that's hard for me. It's really difficult for me. But our congressman over in East Tennessee, Tim Burchett, super conservative. He wears a Carhartt jacket. Like, he's the real deal. And he says openly, I mean, this dude is strong conservative. And he says openly that AOC is a really good friend of his. And they disagree on literally everything. But they have conversations and they talk. And I just think there's something to wrestling with those hard issues, being willing to talk to others that have opposing views, not meaning we're advocating for those opposing views or even agree or even would give it any lip service. I think openly saying, I disagree with you on this thing, but I can have lunch with you. I can pray for your kids. I can hope the best for your family. Like, I think when we get there, it's going to be a much better place, and we'll have a much better pathway of seeing the things that we want to see, because we're doing it in the right posture. Now, some people may hear that and go, you're just a weak need. You're not willing to have the hard conversation. You're not willing to say the hard thing. That's nonsense. And I don't want, I've been in the trenches. so we're like trying to do these things. All I'm saying is, I'm trying to think about longevity and how do we not compromise, but how do we, in these conversations, get folks to, I'm not interested necessarily in changing minds. We want to change hearts. That's what the gospel does. So how are we getting to a place of going, I don't want to just change your mind. If I change your mind today, somebody else can change your mind tomorrow. But if the Lord grabs a hold of your heart fully, that's different. And so how are we getting to that place? And again, I think we don't get there outside of, sitting in rooms together and hashing it out and being willing to be vocal and have those hard conversations, opposing, when somebody makes a statement or a position and going, I don't see that. Explain it to me. How did you end up there? And I'll explain to you how I ended up where I'm at. And then let's see what that looks like.
Yes. I like that. I think that's a great place to end this conversation is with just the understanding that that there is opportunity to come together even in the divide, right? Mm-hmm. To appreciate the humanity of the person who may be on the other side of you. I mean, and look, not everybody's a good person.
No,
that's not what
no, they're not.
And so,
well, and I think too, there's something to Scripture saying we are fighting, spiritual war. Like some of these folks, I'll just be honest. Some of these folks, and I've tried to have conversations. I'm going, no, I'm dusting my sandals off. I'm out. Like, yeah. This isn't. I'll leave you to the Lord, kind of thing. But then there's others where I'm like, hold on, I think we can do this. You're not, seeking to end my life. Like there are people in our country that would, because of the things we stand for, not only want us to lose our job, they want us to lose our life. They want our wives to be widows and our kids to be fatherless. Like that's a reality. Now
they want our daughters to be raped.
Yeah.
So that we will understand. Like that's what it would 100%. Take for us to change our position.
And so I just want to be clear. I'm not saying sit down and sing Kumbaya with that. I can't coexist with you, and I won't. I'm not doing it. But there are folks that will we will have conversations with where we can say, look, we just see it differently. But no, the ones that are like, you should be dead and your kids should be fatherless to know what it's like. No, those folks, I'll just leave you to the Lord and let him take it from there.
Amen. All right, man, this has been an amazing conversation. I appreciate you, and I look forward to doing it again next week. I ask that everyone pray for me, pray for my son and my father as we travel. Our buddy Stevens in Holland leaves Thursday as well for a week to travel to speak to pregnancy centers. And pray for everyone in the pro-life movement. What we don't want is, even though there are people who do want us dead because of what we stand for, what we don't want is to have to walk forward in fear. And so,
right.
Joshua 1:9 says God has commanded us to be courageous, not asked us. He's commanded us to be courageous, to have no fear because He is with us. And so, pray for everyone that's going to Washington, D.C., and that everything is safe, regardless of the opposition, and that everybody makes it home. All right. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, man. Have fun.